Well, we've played every version of Donkey Kong, we've tackled every version of Donkey Kong Jr., and now it's time for the one no one asked for. A game that might just be Nintendo's big first flop. It's Donkey Kong 3. But hey, just because it wasn't a big hit doesn't mean it's bad, right? I mean, maybe it's a misunderstood gem, a forgotten classic. So, with an open mind and probably too much optimism, I'm diving into every version of Donkey Kong 3 ever made. Let's go. Starting off with the arcade version, and right off the bat, Donkey Kong 3 is nothing like its predecessors. Whilst the first two were all about platforming, this one takes a sharp turn into the Space Invaders territory. You're stuck at the bottom of the screen, shooting upwards like a maniac to protect some flowers from a swarm of bugs. All whilst DK is hanging up there, menacingly swatting at beehives. It's weird. So, what's the main objective? Well, the game gives you a couple of options. You can focus on blasting Donkey Kong, so he retreats to the top of the screen, which is usually the fastest way, or you can stick it out and annihilate every single bug in the level. Ideally, you want to focus on Donkey Kong, but as the levels get more difficult, that becomes almost impossible. But if you neglect him too much and he makes it to the bottom, you'll die. Having said that, if you take too long and run out of time killing the bugs, you'll also die, so it becomes a bit of a juggling act. There's also a super spray item that gives you a serious power trip. You get one at the start of a game, but after that, it only shows up when you die. And this thing is ridiculous. Knock it loose from DK, pick it up, and your crappy bug spray will become a bleeding machine gun. Say hello to my little friend. They could shoot the shit out of DK before he even knows what hit him. And heck, with some clever planning, you can complete multiple levels with just one item. It's nuts. Speaking of levels, let's talk about them, or the lack thereof. I mean, the first stage is the standard greenhouse layout. There's 3 tiers, some vines, there's nothing too crazy. Then you move to a greenhouse with a gap in the middle. I mean, thrilling, I know. And the third stage? Okay, at least it mixes things up a little bit. The focus here is on defeating DK directly by timing your shots carefully, or whilst dodging these snakes. Meanwhile, Donkey Kong's throwing coconuts at your face. I mean, it's not exactly groundbreaking, but hey, at least it's something. Unfortunately, that's it. 3 levels, endlessly repeated. Compared to the variety in the earlier games, this feels a little flat. The challenge here isn't in the stages themselves, but in mastering the enemy patterns. And boy, are there a lot of enemies. You got the standard flies that chuck spears at you, you got these big exploding bees that scatter projectiles everywhere, there's these unkillable snakes that you just have to shoot out of your way, and hey, they look a bit like Goombas actually. And if a fly makes off with a flower, it morphs into a deadly homing Beyblade thing. And trust me, you do not want that happening. So, as you progress, the game ramps up. By level 6, these blue bugs dive bomb you with laser focus. At level 12, these aggressive wasp-like enemies show up. By level 15, Donkey Kong's lobbing coconuts in your face. Level 18 introduces these fellas. And finally, at level 24, butterflies. Yes, you heard me right, butterflies. Nature's perfect killing machine. Get hit by any of these enemies and they swarm you and eat you alive till nothing is left. Holy crap, that's dark. Maybe that's why no one remembers Stanley. He was wiped from existence by, evil bugs. The only thing that remains is his bug spray. Actually, this death music sounds a bit like, Star Wars. It's not just me, right? I'll tell you what though, what's annoying is, you can complete a level and then die by a stray projectile anyway, which is a bit crap. The thing is, almost no one gets to level 24, let's be honest. It's an endurance test for only the truly dedicated. Most people probably don't even know that half of these enemies even exist in the first place. I know for a fact that this is the first time you ever seen these butterflies. The game really could have benefited from introducing these enemy types earlier, because they're the only real variety in the entire game. I mean, the 3 levels ain't doing much for me. Granted, it's not terrible, there's so much shit going on that it can be quite intense. You got snakes, you got all the various bugs, you gotta protect the flowers, there's coconuts being lobbed in your face. I mean, look at this shit, it's complete chaos, and it's pretty fun when it all comes together. You feel like a bit of a badass weaving through all the enemies. You know all the moves before they even do it. You feel like a genius. Always 2 steps ahead. I think really, the problem with this game is that it's like, why is it Donkey Kong? Where's Mario? Who the fuck is Stanley? I mean, why is it about bugs? It's such a massive departure from the other games, and I think it put people off. But even if viewed as its own thing in a complete vacuum, it's nothing amazing. It feels derivative of other games, seemingly trying to cash in on Space Invaders and Galaga, but not really innovating that much. Ultimately, it's fun, but not that fun, and it gets repetitive quite quickly. As it is, I'm giving this a 6 out of 10, and it's going at the top of the Donkey Kong 3 leaderboard. Which makes sense, because it's the only one I played. Anyway, the following year, in 1984, Nintendo released Donkey Kong 3 on the Famicom, also known as the NES, and at a first glance, it seems like a pretty faithful port to the arcade version, which is promising. But as you dig in, you'll notice one big difference. It's way easier. For starters, taking down Donkey Kong feels like a breeze by comparison. You can spam your spray without much strategy, and it's surprisingly effective this time around. And the enemies? They barely put up a fight. Those projectile shooting bugs that kept you on edge in the arcade version, well, they've gone soft. They barely shoot anything. Maybe like once every few levels. It's not really a thing. Even when the tougher enemies show up, they're shooting blanks. Honestly, I'm not complaining about this change. The original arcade game's projectiles were so fast and small, half the time you die without even knowing what hit you. And here's another tweak. If a fly grabs a flower, it doesn't morph into the dreaded spinning Beyblade of Doom. It just disappears. So that's one less thing to stress over. Flowers are now purely for points. Oh, and Donkey Kong doesn't lob coconuts at you either, except during that final level. Again, fewer things to worry about. So yeah, the NES version is easier, but it also fixes one of my biggest gripes with the arcade game, the pacing. New enemies show up much sooner now. You don't have to slug your way to level 24 just to see the bleeding butterflies. They make their debut at level 15. This faster introduction of enemies makes the game way more engaging because, you know, you actually get to see them. And for an NES game, it's impressive how much action is crammed onto the screen. There's no slowdown, there's no visual glitches, it runs perfectly. And just like the arcade version, when the difficulty does ramp up, you hit this zen-like flow state where everything just clicks and it becomes a ton of fun. There's also a Game B mode that cranks up the challenge. It's not a massive leap in difficulty, but Donkey Kong takes more hits to defeat, and the enemies fire more projectiles. And overall, there's just more chaos happening. It strikes a nice balance, not as overwhelming as the arcade version, but definitely tougher than the base game. Honestly, this is probably the ideal way to play for most people. Oh, and there's a 2-player mode. But don't get too excited, it's just a classic take turns setup, which feels like a missed opportunity. I mean, imagine a simultaneous co-op mode in Donkey Kong 3. That would have been amazing. But as it stands, the 2-player mode is basically just a throwaway feature. So that's the NES version of Donkey Kong 3. And here's a hot take, I actually liked it more than the arcade original. Sure, it's technically missing a few elements, but the improved pacing of the new enemies makes a huge difference. So, my final verdict, and it's a solid 7 out of 10. It might lack the arcade game's edge, but it's just more fun. I mean, what can I say? Next up, released in the same year, is Donkey Kong 3 on the Game & Watch. And well, despite keeping the general bug spraying theme, is completely different from the original. DK has had enough of being pushed around, and he's done and gone got a spray himself, and he's fighting back. So the game is more like a reverse tug of war match. You're trying to push the bugs towards the other player to kill them. The problem is, you've only got limited ammo, so you need to keep going back to refill, and that's when they get you. It's quite a tedious game though, and frankly, it seems almost impossible to lose. It's such a one-note game. Refill ammo, spam it in the general proximity of a bug, and repeat. It never seems to get more difficult. Donkey Kong's AI seemingly stays the same the entire game, and he just simply can't keep up. It's just incredibly one note and boring. I mean, it's mindless, and getting points is incredibly slow too. By the time I got to 300, I felt my soul leaving my body. The thing is, I'm actually a huge fan of Game & Watch games. They might look primitive at a glance, but they really are quite remarkable in how well they're expertly designed. They push the limits of the LCD game format to offer some seriously fun experiences. So I'm not just ripping into this game because of the technology. Even for Game & Watch standards, this one feels flat. Pun intended. Luckily, there is a 2-player mode, and really, this game is part of a Versus series, so that's probably the main focus. And yeah, it is quite a lot better with 2 players. It's mostly the same gameplay wise. It's still relatively mindless, but the score system is replaced with a health system, and suddenly, the game actually has some intensity. See, whenever a bug is on your side of the screen, your health will slowly decrease, get to 0, and you die. This one change completely changes the dynamic of the entire game. It's now a desperate struggle to get those bugs away rather than just, slowly grinding points. Dying is actually a real threat this time. Granted, the gameplay, it just isn't that good, but the 2-player mode is significantly better, and it basically saves the entire game. And frankly, having a 2-player LCD game like this is incredibly ambitious, and the design of this thing's nuts. But the game itself, it's a 4 out of 10 at the very best, and that's only if you got 2 players. Otherwise, it's like 3. And next up, we've got Donkey Kong 3, The Great Counterattack. Wow, what a title! Now, this game was basically lost media till recently, and even then, not every version is available to play, although, looking at them, they're probably all pretty similar. Basically, this is some rare stuff right here, and I'll be checking out the Sharp X1 version, developed by our old buds at Hudson. And, this is certainly something. They've basically removed everything that made the original arcade game unique, and now it's pretty much just like Gallagher now. You can't jump, there's no platforms or layers, you're just stuck at the bottom. The bugs just come down in waves, and there's no unique behaviours really. There's just nothing to it. Even when they introduce the new bugs from the arcade game, they don't do much. If anything, they seem easier than the starting bugs, because at least they shot projectiles. These other guys don't do anything. Heck, those butterflies who show up last only take 1 hit to kill. They're supposed to be the hardest ones. At least Donkey Kong starts to throw coconuts at you later on, which sort of spices things up I guess, but not really. Donkey Kong's no longer climbing on vines now either. He's falling through the sky with his little tiny parachute looking things. Dude, they must be some pretty bleeding strong parachutes to hold up a fully grown gorilla. And just like the arcade game, you need to keep spraying him till he reaches the top. But good luck with that, because the precision needed to hit him is basically pixel perfect. You basically need to hit the exact single pixel where his dick would be. Bit to the left, nothing. Bit to the right, nothing. You got to be dead center. You're better off just spawning and not even moving and just spamming attack, because once you move, it's a pain in the ass getting it to line up again. Although eventually, with enough practice, you'll get it down. It's just all about finding that sweet spot as quickly as possible. The thing is, you don't even get any points for completing a level this way. The only way to get points is to kill enemies this time, if you actually care about points. But let's be honest, no one's playing this game because of points. Because what the actual fuck is going on with these level themes? On the highway, on the strange bridge, on the country road. It might seem like nonsense at first, but I think it's actually telling a story. Look, in the background, there's a UFO. It crash lands. You approach it on the country road, and you're greeted by aliens. You go in their UFO and fly around the galaxy, visiting planets and flying through asteroid belts till you reach what looks like Mars. You find a giant pyramid, perhaps alluding to the theory that the Great Pyramids were made by aliens. You go inside, and it's all fucked up and weird. I mean, what am I looking at? It's fucking Gygas or something, I don't know, I'm scared. We then see a volcano. We go inside, and there's a giant dome. What is this, the alien space? We then see an image of the ancient Nazca lines from Peru. Confusing. And then, I think we find ourselves back on Earth on a runway. Perhaps our journey is over. But no, because a nuclear bomb goes off and we're fighting Donkey Kong in front of a bleeding mushroom cloud. Holy shit! Did the aliens nuke the Earth? Is humanity destroyed? Is Donkey Kong an alien? I don't know. All I know is that we need to keep shooting Donkey Kong. Just keep shooting. We then see a sunset, perhaps symbolizing the end of humanity. Perhaps this game is a warning to us all about the dangers of nuclear war. And the last level is a futuristic looking city on another planet. Is this the aliens' homeworld, or a sign humanity lives on? So many questions, so little answers. But the biggest question is, what the hell has this got to do with Donkey Kong 3? What the fuck did I just experience? It's like I took some hard drugs and I'm just tripping the fuck out. Aliens, pyramids, or nuclear bombs? Excuse me sir, but this is a game about spraying bugs. Did you forget? The thing is, the gameplay bleeding sucks, so this trippy stuff is all it has going for it. I mean, all you do is spam Donkey Kong, dodging the occasional attack as the frame rate slows down to a crawl, and the enemies just become a cluster of pixels. They're blending into the background, you can't even see what's going on half the time. I mean, just look, it's a fucking mess. It's just a generic, sloppy space shooting game that isn't worth playing. But there's a certain charm in pushing through just to see the next insane level. And for that bizarre journey alone, I'm rating this game a solid, very respectable 3 out of 10. Next up, released all the way in 2002, we've got Game & Watch Gallery 4. Now, this includes a pretty faithful recreation of the Game & Watch game from earlier, but it also includes a whole new remake. And now, instead of spraying bugs like the original, we're in a haunted house with a weird water gun trapping booze and fireballs and bubbles. Well, that's certainly a different interpretation. Now, in the classic version, frankly, the game was mindless. The computer player couldn't keep up with you, and it was basically impossible to lose. So I guess here, they tried to make it a bit more tactical and skill-based in a few new ways. First up, this boo will move towards the closest player when they look away to reload. So the boo is your main target really. Once it gets close to someone, it becomes a real problem getting rid of it. And the fireball is kinda lame in comparison. I mean, it just goes up and down a lot. Although it can block the boo from being pushed back, which can be annoying. Your bubbles will also get destroyed if you hit the other players, so I guess you don't want to mindlessly spam as much as the original. And finally, you can now store up to 4 shots. So in theory, this game should be better, right? But well, I don't know, because the problem is, it's painfully boring. Granted, the classic version wasn't exactly amazing, but it was actually quite fast-paced and frantic at times. This one is just so slow. The drips are slow, pushing enemies is slow, you're constantly getting blocked by other objects, and that's even if you get hit at all. It just feels like you're never making any progress, and the scoring is painfully slow. And the thing is, this game has a high score requirement too. See, like other games in these collections, you get a star at every 200 points, maxing out at 1000, and you need to do this to unlock everything. And let me tell ya, it takes a long time. As a kid, I did everything in this game. I got 1000 points on every single game, apart from this. This was the one thing stopping me from 100% save file. It's just an absolute slog. Heck, even the classic version takes half the time to get 1000 points. And what's worse is, you've only got 3 lives and you can never get any more. I mean, usually Game & Watch games give you extra lives at 200 and 500 points, but not here. Die 3 times and you lose it all. Gotta start again. Man, getting 1,000 points on this is just a nightmare. Yes, I get it, it's supposed to be a 2-player game. But if that's the case, don't make me play a single-player version for like 5 fucking hours in one sitting. And the thing is, they ruined the 2-player mode too. They removed that cool little health system from the original and instead just going for a standard 3 lives each. That 2-player mode was the saving grace of the Game & Watch version, and they ruined it. Typical. Screw this game, man. It's not even a great remake, going way too far from the original source material. It's a ghost house, and they couldn't even use Luigi. I mean, come on now. The game just sucks. I kinda hate it. It's a 2 out of 10. And the thing is, there's a Game & Watch game called Greenhouse, which ironically is much closer to a Donkey Kong 3 arcade game. And it's a way better game than this too. Even the remake's better. They should have just called this one Donkey Kong 3 if you ask me. But you know what, maybe I'll take a look at all the Game & Watch games one day actually, see which one's the best. But for now, before we look at the final version, figured I'd have a little look at the WarioWare Twisted micro game. And see, like the arcade game, you've got to spray DK upwards before the time runs out. And that's it. I mean, in theory, you're supposed to tilt your Game Boy and follow Donkey Kong to aim your shots, but standing perfectly still and spamming works every single time. So, it's not the best micro game. But anyway, it's time for the final version of Donkey Kong 3. And this time, it's for the e-reader. The old classic failed Nintendo peripheral. Swipe the cards to download the games. No idea how it works, but let's check it out. And it's a bit of a tedious process, as it takes 5 cards and 10 swipes just to get the thing working. Man, this better be worth it. And yeah, it's just the NES version again. Only everything's kinda squished. Maybe the sprites have been redrawn. I don't know, but it doesn't look great. But after playing all these terrible ports and shit, it's kinda nice just to go back to the original, you know? I almost forgot what it was even like at this point. I mean, there's no aliens, no nukes, just bugs. But yeah, it's basically the NES version, only looks a bit worse, doesn't have 2-player, and I guess it's technically portable if you're looking around a bloody e-reader and 5 cards, so 6 out of 10. And that's it, every version of Donkey Kong 3. Yeah, well, I can see why this game never really caught on. I mean, part of me was hoping it would be a hidden gem, but nah, it's just not great. It's the worst of the 3 arcade games, and even the Game & Watch game feckin' sucked, and I usually love those. Bit of a downer really, I'm sorry about that. But alas, it's time to look at the old Donkey Kong 3 leaderboard, and see which is the best, and which is the worst. Let's go. At the bottom, in number 6. Man, there's only 6 versions of Donkey Kong 3. That's sad. Anyway, it's Game & Watch Gallery 4 with a 2 out of 10. Screw that game. At number 5 is Donkey Kong 3 The Great Counterattack with a drug-induced 3 out of 10. At number 4 is the Game & Watch version, getting an extra point for the 2-player mode with a 4 out of 10. At number 3 is the e-reader version. At number 2 is the arcade original. And at number 1, for the first time ever, dethroning the arcade original, is the NES version with a whopping, amazing 7 out of 10. Yeah, so good. And that's it. Thanks for watching. And who knows, maybe this video will inspire you to give Donkey Kong 3 another chance. Maybe. And hey, we've now played every version of every Donkey Kong game. I can now call myself the Donkey Kong Master. Take that, Billy Mitchell, you cheating bastard git. And our Goomba of the week is Goomba. See, because he likes Goemon and Mario, so you combine the two and then pronounce it wrong some reason. It's a genius username.